Hi everybody and welcome to 120, your Chief Contrarian Officer. I want to raise a question and I want to share my 2 cents with you. Most of the time countries brag and swagger and measure each other's success only based on GDP grew by this percentage, GDP grew by that percentage. Yet the gap between haves and have-nots and the disparities in society, the intake of antidepressants, the configuration and bonding of families, the pollution in environment, all of these things show that there is not necessarily a correlation between satisfaction factor and happiness and the GDP. Now GDP 1.5, 2, 3.5, even in 4 or even in cases higher, hasn't necessarily resulted into a better society. Now a lot of people will come and say, oh, it's much better, we don't do this, we don't do that. But when you go to people and talk to them, you realize that a lot of people find dislocated, out of kilter. Antidepressants are going high, environment quality, the sewerage that goes to the water here, to that river, across the world. I'm not just talking about UK or Western Hemisphere. But this intoxication with GDP has caused and provoked me to think and to share with you, why not gross domestic progress? What does that mean? A better society in terms of income distribution. A society without corruption, or benchmarking a society with the lowest corruption level. A society in which universal and healthcare and education are there, but not just universities, vocational training, the transfer of craftsmanship from the older generation, the arts of that society from its Aboriginal, I would say native people, transferred and preserved. A society in which it has the lowest number of inmates and people in jail and the highest uptake if anybody goes out for rehabilitation and integration back into the society. A society that is a peacemaker, not that every time there is a conflict, putting more wood logs on the fire, or not even in the worst case scenario itself starting the fire and getting into prolonged war. It would be the center for dialogue. A society that, for that matter, can be an example of contentment, not by the virtue of just the production and using resources and energy and this rush and zipping up, all kinds of pills just to produce more. To what extent and for what? Because the difference between gross domestic production and this gap, downward gap in satisfaction, and gross domestic progress is a very fine thin line that is a puncture. And if a society gets punctured in terms of its motives, energy, drive, zest, and its human capital, no matter how high this production goes, it's a delta, a deficit that cannot be covered. Gross domestic progress? Why not? Do think about it. Do subscribe and see you soon.